Hi everyone, this is a video for Act 2, Scene 2. In this scene, it's very late on the Sunday night, early Monday morning in Capulet's orchard. Romeo advances towards Juliet's balcony because he cannot be separated from her and he wishes to speak to her again. So it opens with these words: "He jests at scars that never felt a wound." So he's responding to what Mercutio and Benvolio have just been saying in terms of Romeo being lovesick and those kind of things about Rosaline. And he says to them, he jests at scars that never felt a wound. So they're laughing at me when they've never felt the pain of love. And he says, but soft, he looks up towards the balcony and he sees Juliet. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Now you can see we've got an awful lot of annotations here actually. The first one that we've got here is what light through yonder window breaks. And the important word here is light. Here we've got a symbolism of light and the metaphor being used here in terms of light being associated with innocence. So this represents Juliet's innocence. He develops this further with this idea of almost idolising Juliet. I've written here idolatry of Juliet, the idea that he worships her. He says, it is the east, Juliet is the sun. So he's almost something that's an essential source of life for him, something that keeps him going, something that sustains him, and he worships her and idolises her. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. So all of this celestial imagery here elevates Juliet to heavenly esteem. And when we're saying here, kill the envious moon, the moon reminds us of the idea of not only darkness and light in the darkness, but also reminds us of that imagery of fertility, because the moon is often associated with the female menstrual cycle. So it reminds us of, again, their sexuality, that growth from innocence to experience, that kind of female role of Juliet as well. But all of this represents the idea that he really idolises her as his lover. Well, his future lover. Okay. And he continues, arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. So these words, sick, pale, sick and green, they evoke notions of imagery of sickness. And this links to later on, when Mercutio is killed, he proclaims a plague on both your houses and sets up the idea of Verona as a place of sickness, a place of corruption, a place of disease. Juliet then appears aloft as at a window. So this is Juliet in her balcony coming from her bedroom. Romeo says, it is my lady, oh it is my love, oh that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses, I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business to entreat her eyes to twinkle in the spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright, that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. So in this section here, we've got a kind of continuation of Romeo's earlier soliloquy. Remember the words that were spoken aloud at the moment where he first saw Juliet, where he was using all that language to do with light and darkness and those binary oppositions, those juxtapositions between the darkness and this heavenly lightness of this woman that he'd seen for the first time. And that continues again here, particularly this line, two of the fairest stars in all of the heaven. So celestial imagery. This idea of the stars as though there is a higher order in control and that the lovers are ill-fated, that there is something that's controlling their destiny. But then the in all the heaven sets up this idea of hyperbole, this exaggeration. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven. This idea of cosmic significance and destiny being linked to their love. That imagery of brightness continues. The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars. Now what's interesting about this is the brightness of her cheek would shame those stars. Romeo is setting up this idea of almost like a hierarchy in which Juliet is right above it. She is even more beautiful. She would shame those stars. So Romeo is in awe of Juliet. There's this sense that he idolises Juliet and worships Juliet. And that's being built again and again here. And he does that worshipping idea again further with this use of synecdoche, so where a part of something represents the whole, and in this case it's individual body parts of Juliet representing her overall beauty. So that hand, that cheek, so that synecdoche, the hand and the cheek representing the whole of Juliet, is physical imagery and emphasises his fixation with her and her physical beauty as well. Romeo makes an aside. So remember, he's listening to her, but she hasn't yet seen him. So anything that he speaks is spoken at this stage almost to himself as he watches her. Romeo says, "Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night being o'er my head as is a winged messenger of heaven, unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air. O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet." So this section again is important. We've got more of that idolising language to do with Juliet, bright angel, winged messenger from heaven. It gives her that ethereal, angelic quality, almost as though she's too holy and perfect and innocent, almost to be believed in the world of mere mortals. But he gives this kind of ethereal, angelic imagery and then uses the word mortals. Now, a mortal is somebody who can die. If you're immortal, you can't die. So it reminds us that, yes, okay, she's heavenly and she's beautiful, but the word mortal reminds us that, yes, she belongs to God, but he might reclaim her. She might die and be taken away from him. So it foreshadows that idea of death again. And this line is really famous. "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Now, you've probably heard that line before. It doesn't mean, "Where are you, Romeo?" When she says, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" it means, why? Why is your name Romeo? Why are you a Capulet? That's what she's asking there. And when these lines here where it keeps saying, "Refuse thy name, why are you Romeo? I'll no longer be a Capulet," their names are almost metaphors for the conflict itself. And they're playing now with this idea of a name and what it means and why it binds them to their own individual families. And that continues as the scene progresses. So Romeo continues listening, and he says, "Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?" Juliet says, and this is continuing that theme of names, "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy." So it's not you that is my enemy, it's your family that is my enemy. And Juliet realises that. "What's Montague? It is not nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called. Retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself." So she's willing Romeo to almost reject his name, reject his identity, and saying, if you weren't a Montague, I could give myself to you, and I would be a worthy prize for giving up your name. And so here, when she says, "What's a Montague? It is not hand nor foot," she's challenging that idea of blood and heritage as being intrinsic to your identity. And the lovers challenge and dismiss the identity that comes with their family names. They want to almost dismiss that and reject that family name that they're connected to. And that's reinforced here when she says, "That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet." So the imagery of the rose reminds us of the pain and suffering in love. You'll remember earlier on, when Romeo is talking about his unrequited love for Rosaline, he talks about how love pricks like thorn. So that idea of pain and suffering, and this time it's the pain and suffering and turmoil that she feels in realising that his name is Romeo. He is a Montague and they can't be together, or they shouldn't be together. Romeo says, "I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth I will never be Romeo." So he's willing to reject his name if he can have her. "What man art thou that hast thus bescreened in night, so stumblest on my counsel? By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear Sate, is hateful to myself, because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word." So remember, Romeo has been nestled just listening to her beneath the balcony, and his first reveal to her that he is there is his voice. She hears his voice before she sees him reveal himself. And he says, oh, I can't tell you who I am because my name is the name of your enemy. Juliet recognises him immediately. My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague? So there's that revelation. You're the son of my enemy. And this is something real, something powerful. Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike. So he's willing to kind of shrug off that identity, that family identity, if she doesn't like it, if it means that they can be together. How camest thou hither? Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art. If any of my kinsmen find thee here. Romeo says, with love's light wings did I overperch these walls. For stony limits cannot hold love out. For what love can do that dares love attempt? Therefore their kinsmen are no stop to me. When Romeo says with love's light wings, there's this allusion to heaven, to the way that love elevates us and makes us feel weightless with happiness and joy. If they do see thee, they will murder thee. Alack, there lies more peril in thine eyes than 20 of their swords. Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity. I would not for the world they saw thee here. I have night's cloak to hide me from their eyes. So Romeo's saying, don't worry, it's dark. Nobody will see me. I've got night's cloak to hide me. And but thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued, wanting of thy love. So when Romeo uses this line here, I have night's cloak to hide me in their eyes. This night's cloak, that imagery of nighttime and darkness. Remember, nighttime is a place of sanctuary for Romeo and Juliet. And actually that's a repeated structural motif all the way through the play, this idea of safety. Later on, Juliet, and just a couple of lines later, uses that same imagery of night as safety and protection. Sanctuary just means safety. So there's this kind of duplicitous nature of night, where night is normally associated with fear and danger, but for them it represents safety and protection and a place where their love can continue. This line as well is really important. We've talked about proleptic irony before, that idea of foreshadowing. When Romeo says, my life were better ended by their hate than my death prorogued, wanting of thy love, he's basically saying, I would rather die than be without you. And actually, when he says, my life were better ended by their hate, it actually foreshadows his own death. His life will be ended by this feud and their desire to be together. By whose direction foundst thou out this place? By love that did first prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel, and I lent him eyes. I am no pilot, yet wert thou as far as that vast shore washed with the farthest sea. I should have ventured for such merchandise. So look at the personification here that Romeo is using. Love did prompt me. Love lent me counsel. So this personification of love as a driving force between them, it's overwhelming, it's all-consuming. It makes me do things. Love is driving me towards you, is basically what he's saying. Juliet uses that imagery of night again. She says, thou knowest the mask of night is on my face. Else would a maiden blush bepaint my cheek. So in this case, nighttime is her sanctuary because it saves her embarrassment. It saves her blushes when he's saying nice things about her. For that which thou had heard me speak tonight. So she says, thou knowest the mask of night is on my face, else would a maiden blush bepaint my cheek for that which thou hast heard me speak tonight. What she means there is, she's basically saying that she's blushing because she's kind of so flattered by the wonderful things that he's been saying. And she's so happy that it's dark because he can't see her blushing with embarrassment at all the kind of flattery he's been laying at her feet as he stood, as she is, all the flattery that she has been laying at his feet, while he's been listening. She's embarrassed about the things that he might have heard her saying at the balcony. Fain would I dwell on form, fain deny what I have spoke, but farewell compliment. Dost thou love me? If thou wilt say aye, and I will take thy word, yet if thou swearest, thou mayst prove false. At lovers' perjuries, they say Jove laughs. O gentle Romeo, if thou dost love, pronounce it faithfully. Or if thou thinkst I am too quickly won, I'll frown and be perverse and say thee nay. So thou wilt woo, but else not for the world. So she's willing Romeo to say that he loves her, but she feels almost a bit concerned, a bit tentative, as though she's been too easily won over, essentially. Okay. And then she continues this idea of being too quickly falling in love when she says, "In truth, fair Montague, I am too fond, and therefore thou mayst think my behaviour light." So she doesn't want him to think that she appears too forward, but she's finding this feeling of love overwhelming and totally all-consuming. "But trust me, gentlemen, I'll prove more true than those that have more coying to be strange. I should have been more strange, I must confess. So I should have been a little bit more coy, a little bit more reserved, but I can't. I'm so overwhelmed with love for you. I should have been more strange, I must confess, but that thou overheardst here I was ware." So she's saying, I could pretend that I'm not excited by the fact that you're here and that I'm feeling these feelings for you, but you've already heard me saying all of them at the balcony. My true love passion, therefore pardon me, and not impute this yielding to light love, which the dark night hath so discovered. Lady, by yonder blessed moon I vow, that tips with silver all these fruit tree tops. So he says, no, I vow that I love you, and I vow by the moon, is what he's saying to her. "Oh, swear not by the moon," she says. No, don't swear on the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes. So she's making the point that she says to him, to say that you love me. And he says, "Oh, I do love you. I swear by the moon that I love you." And she says, "No, don't swear by the moon. The moon changes." Because if you think about the kind of cycle of the moon, sometimes it's a full moon, sometimes it's just a sliver of moon, sometimes it's a crescent of moon, sometimes it's a half moon, those kind of things. So she's suggesting that she doesn't want him to swear by the moon because that's something that's inconstant, that's something that changes. And so we're going to stop in just a moment here, but we'll just focus on this little bit here about this imagery of speed and transience of their love. So in this, what we've got, the inconstant moon changes. We've got a semantic field of transience. If something's transient, it just means it's temporary, it changes. And this foreshadows the short-lived nature of their love. She doesn't want it to be short-lived, she wants it to endure, and she's worried that if he swears by something that's changeable, then she almost won't have control over that. That it's something that will be lost almost as quickly as it arrives. And then similarly, she also uses this imagery of fertility again, the inconstant moon that monthly changes. So the moon and the monthly again reminds us of that imagery of femininity and fertility and her kind of menstrual cycle, and that progression from being a child to being a woman as well as being emphasised here. Romeo says then, okay, well, what shall I swear by? "Do not swear at all, if thou wilt. Swear by thy gracious self, which is the god of my idolatry, and I'll believe thee." So she says, don't swear on anything, just swear on yourself. Swear that you love me. "If my heart's dear love, well, do not swear, although I joy in thee. I have no joy in this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lightning." So again, she's got that imagery of transience. It's going to be there for 1 second and then gone straight away. So it's too rash, it's too quick, essentially is what she's saying. Too sudden, too unadvised. They haven't thought carefully about it enough. And this simile, it's too like the lightning, reinforces that semantic field of transience, the ephemeral nature of their love. Because if you think about a lightning strike, it strikes for a second and lights up the landscape, and then the next second it's gone and we're plunged into darkness again. And so she's worried that their love will be there in a flash and gone again within a second. And so she wants it to be enduring, she wants it to last. And not only that, we have that motif of the imagery of fertility continued again. Too like the lightning which doth cease to be, ere one can say it lightens. So it's too like the lightning which ceases to be as soon as you say it's lit up the room or it's lit up the place. "Sweet good night, this bud of love by summer's ripening breath may prove a beauteous flower." Bud of love, ripening breath, beauteous flower, all of those things to do with growth and plants and new life is to do with imagery of fertility. Bud, ripening, flower, again reminding us of that transition from the innocence of a child to the experience of a woman. May prove a beauteous flower when we next meet. Good night, a sweet repose and rest. Come to thy heart as that within my breast. Wilt thou leave me so unsatisfied? What satisfaction canst thou have tonight? The exchange of thy love's faithful vow for mine. I gave thee mine before thou didst request it, and yet I would it were to give again. Wouldst thou withdraw it? For what purpose, love? But to be frank and give it thee again, and yet I wish for the thing I have. My bounty is as boundless as the sea, my love as deep. The more I give to thee, the more I have, for both are infinite. Nurse calls within. I hear some noise within. Dear love, adieu, anon, good nurse. Sweet Montague, be true. So she starts to say farewell to Romeo because she can hear her nurse calling inside. Be true, stay a little, I will come again. O blessed, blessed night, I am afeard, being in night, all this is but a dream, too flattering sweet to be substantial. Again, here Romeo continues that theme of night as protection. Oh, blessed, blessed night. But he wonders if all of this has been a dream. It's been almost too perfect, and it must be a dream for Romeo. Okay, we're just going to pause there because this is normally where I would stop to discuss that initial part there, and there's a lot to digest. This one in the longer video. So we're going to divide this scene into two. Okay, so take a little break and we'll come on to the second part of Act 2, Scene 2 when you're ready. Okay.